I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And I'd really appreciate if you would also mind subscribing to the podcast. I know a lot of you are listening, but make sure you are subscribing. Feel free to share it and let me know what you think over on Instagram and Facebook at Jeff Gruby. Hey everyone, today's episode is brought to you by Vivo Life. Now we all know how important protein is to maintain an optimal diet. And me, I'm a busy dad of 2 little kids, and as much as I want to get all of my nutrients from whole foods, sometimes I just can't manage to make that happen. And I absolutely need the best quality foods so I can recover from my workouts and sustain my energy so I can show up and be the dad that I want to be. And that's why over the years, I was on a quest to find the healthiest and cleanest protein powder that I can use after my workouts. So what I do is I mix a scoop of Vivo Life Perform in with my post-workout recovery meal, which is oatmeal, blueberries, flaxseed, and it tastes amazing. I love it. So not only does Vivo meet the criteria I need, it also is environmentally friendly as well. It's 100% plant-based protein, and the flavor is extremely smooth compared to other protein powders I've tried out there. Part of the reason is they use fermented protein, which is the healthiest protein that you can have for your digestive system, especially mine. On top of that, it has amazing ingredients like turmeric, ginger, and reishi mushrooms. What's so freaking awesome is that Vivo Life stands behind their product, and if you don't feel the difference in 30 days, they give you a full refund, no questions asked. So I get it. We're all unique. We're all different. We have different preferences. You be the judge yourself. Go to vivolife.com and at the checkout, use the coupon code PERFECT10 for 10% off your first order. And by the way, my favorite flavor is the banana and cinnamon. It's about growing as a person. Your best is completely unique to you. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back. It's episode 21 of the Fuck Perfect podcast. I'm here with author and computer engineer and spare dad, Bill Gervasi. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to see you.
So I know we were talking a bit before the recording, but if you want to give a quick introduction, it could be from the 6-year-old Bill until now, or however you want to cherry pick those stories. What's your little bio or story?
Well, I guess at least my life right at the moment has a whole bunch of aspects to it. For my real life job, I'm designing computer memory, working on this cool carbon nanotube technology and trying to help bring that to market. My spare time, I teach aerobics for the LA Fitness chain of outfits. And then third thing that I picked up a little while ago is I'm doing mentoring of college students in the STEM fields.
Awesome. That's really cool. Have you started that yet, or are you going to?
We're starting our second year of the program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with, actually, it's kind of funny. The woman who heads this is one of my aerobic students. And we got to talking after class, found out that we both had a meeting in Vancouver, British Columbia, in the same hotel, the same week. And so we got together for dinner in British Columbia and hit on this idea of a program to mentor college students in STEM fields to, pay it forward, bring the next set of kids on up into technology. And so we put this program together. Our first year, we had 3 mentorees, and we teaching them life skills. We're not tutors, we're mentors. We want them to understand things like presentation skills, how to write a resume, how to analyze your career path versus your career goals. Some people confuse those terms, and it takes a little mentoring for people to understand that you don't start in a company in the job that you want. You start at the bottom floor and you work your way up, and that progression is an important part of life. And it's not something that I was taught in college, probably not something you learned in school either. Nope. And so that's what we're bringing to the party, is helping teach those things that schools don't teach.
Interesting. It's really in line with the concept even of this podcast, or the thing I like to tell people about, is that in life you put an effort and you're going to have progress, as opposed to once you think you just basically what is it, the convenience problem we have right now, and then sort of the not really entitlement in a bad way, but the idea where people want something fast and they think that they put the work in college, for example, and when they get out of college, now they get that perfect job. But it's like,
Yeah,
no,
kind of like
a
the
lot of
baseball
progress.
analogy, right? The baseball analogy that if you always swing for a home run, yeah, you might get one once in a while. You might not, but
Right.
if you live with getting a single, a double, a triple, and then working your way home, you have a higher likelihood of success.
Yeah. Now, I think it'd be weird for me not to bring up the picture, and people who aren't watching this on YouTube won't know what we're talking about. But the picture in the background, talk about that picture, and I'm very positive that you took this picture, and I've seen it before.
Oh, you're talking about my wallpaper, huh?
Yes, yes.
Is Paradise Beach on the island of Mykonos in Greece. And I
Mhm.
took this picture from the top of a bungee jumping crane. And if I move out of the way, you'll see
Oh, I see the cord.
the bungee cord
Yep.
dangling down below me. So yeah, I took that actually after I did my bungee jump, and the bungee jumping company let me go up a second time to take this picture to share with them for their website.
That's awesome. Now, I'm actually curious, and I never really asked you this before, but it's kind of a cool opportunity to do this. Um, what do you think were some of the really important events that happened in your life that helped you shape you to becoming who you are, to give you the perspective? Because from what I know of you, you've had uh, usually you're very energetic, very passionate, very you love spontaneous activities or events, traveling, and you are a very creative problem solver. So, like, what do you think are some of the events that kind of shaped you into giving you that perspective? Because there's so many times you can hear people tell a story and they could have chose the other way, but your story just seems like this. Uh, your story, literally, actually, in my opinion, all the stories that you tell, you're such a great storyteller, and all the things you've gotten yourself into seem like an exaggerated version of someone's life. So,
You read the book.
so like, what do you think got you to that, having these perspectives that led you to these opportunities?
I don't know. I have a funny feeling that just might be an innate thing. But yeah, I will say that there was one particular turning point, and it's a little bit on the dark side, actually.
Okay. They usually are, I think.
I hurt my back when I was pole vaulting in college and had to drop out of pole vaulting. And so I had gained a significant amount of weight. And so I was up over 200 pounds and not working out.
Mhm,
My father had a heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery.
mhm.
And he's 30 years older than I. And at that point, I realized, holy crap, that's me in 30 years if I don't get my act together. And it was my father's heart attack that actually motivated me to take my life seriously, take control, go back to the gym and start working out. And 10 months later, I started teaching aerobics and I've been teaching ever since.
That's Yeah. I didn't know the how those pieces connected before, and it's the exact same thing with, say, my mom getting cancer in 2008, 2009. That's where I was like, shit, I got to learn how to keep myself healthy in the long run, because I was just obsessed with not repeating uh, maybe mistakes that I saw in my mom. Not to fault her, but just the idea, like, okay, I don't want to repeat that one. And before that, it was like, don't have a kid in high school. That was my first goal. So,
Yeah,
and I passed that I
yeah.
know of.
But this kind of applies to the discussions that we've had about the difference between uh, goal driven versus long term picture. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things that I actually have arguments with. For example, with other fitness people online, that there are
Oh,
a
do
number
tell.
of are critical of some of the things that I do in my classes. Like if you did watch those In Step with Mr. Bill videos, there are moves in there where I've gotten some messages from people like the representatives of Nike saying some of those moves are not safe. And my argument is, but they're fun. And
Hmm.
sometimes people forget about having fun. Sometimes it's more important to enjoy what you're doing and put it in the context of, this is something that's going to help me continue this process for decades,
Hmm.
instead of reaching a goal in 6 months and then falling off the wagon. And we've seen that so many times, especially
Absolutely.
where people feel like, oh, yeah, I've lost that 10 pounds. I'm okay now. No, no, no. What you're supposed to do is think in terms of, find something that you enjoy,
Yep.
so that 20 years from now, that 10 pounds is still gone.
That's exactly 100% what I tell people. I say, like, don't don't show me what you can achieve in 30 or 60 days, then you're back to square one. You know, find what you enjoy because you're most likely going to keep that up. And I'm wondering if that's, not to like analyze you, but I'm wondering if that's sort of been your mantra your whole life and that's how you've had these exaggerated life stories. Like, I think maybe you've always thought what you were seeking fun and you
Uh,
were able to enjoy life at a higher level because you weren't seeking safe, you weren't seeking, say, security, you weren't seeking whatever. You're like, hey, this looks fun, let's go here. That's a restaurant that looks like a piece of shit, let's go there. Like, so your sense of adventure and drive of uncertainty, I think, really propelled you to have this fun life.
yeah, I guess maybe I do feel like, if I'm on solid ground, that's boring.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That maybe one of my favorite expressions is, you've got to always jump off cliffs and build your wings on the way down.
Huh. Yeah, that's an awesome quote. But yeah, I think it's really important that if people are listening and they're picking a not necessarily a workout plan, but just a way to keep their body healthy, that they has to have fun in it. If they're picking out a way to eat, if they're going to be in a state of pain, and that's sort of what this whole perfection thing's about. When people seek perfection, honestly, they're usually seeking pain because perfection is not possible, right? Like, they're like, I'm gonna be on this perfect diet for the rest of my, like, no, you're not. Like, it's not gonna. They're so like nitpicky about what they have, or they have to, exercise this many days, or this is the right way. It's like there's really no right way, but what's the fun way? And that's gonna help you keep it up. And then you won't have to have that motivation factor. Like, man, I don't feel like doing this today. And like, no, because you do feel like doing it. It's fun, right? So,
Good point. My coffee is perfect. French, fine grind on mocha-java dark beans in a French press. Yeah, that is perfection. So I have achieved perfection in one aspect of my
in
life.
one thing, okay, I guess we can let that
The rest of
slide.
it, I'll keep working.
Yeah. All right. So then, what that I was actually thinking about asking this question, but didn't know how it to come up organically. How do you make perfect coffee?
Well, I grew up with Depression era parents.
Hmm.
Uh, my dad worked 3 jobs to keep the family fed, and 4 brothers sharing one bedroom. I mean, it was, yeah, pretty tight kind of lifestyle. And so I was brought up to think that coffee was something called taster's choice. And that if you put enough cream and sugar, you could bury the fact that it was actually just mud that you were putting in it. So I went up to Oregon for a job interview at Intel, and went to a restaurant named Kunker Dagger Bickerstaff and Pets. And so I ordered a cup of coffee with cream and sugar, and the waitress said, "Try it black." And I said, "No, no, no, no. I take my coffee with cream and sugar." But she was persistent. She said, "Try it black." So I ordered the coffee. She brought this coffee cup out, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't see the bottom of the coffee cup. And I thought, what the hell is this? And I took a sip.
Hmm.
Angels began to sing. The clouds parted and sunlight shone through the clouds from the heavens above.
Hmm.
And I said, "Dear God, what is this?" And she said, "This is black coffee. We we roast and grind our own coffees here. You've just had your first cup of real homebrew coffee." And from that day forward, in April of 1980, I've been on the quest for the perfect cup of coffee. And when I discovered the mocha-java beans in the mid 1990s, that was it. I was pretty much
Yeah.
sold forward.
And is it a specific type of mocha java bean that you get?
Yeah,
S-
from Peerless Coffee up in
yeah,
Oakland, California.
yeah,
Yeah, you've gotten that for Christmas a few times.
yeah, yeah. It's a good. It's really really good. And do you always French press it?
Always French press it.
Hmm. And do you weigh, or do you have a scoop that's been like the same scoop that you know with a certain amount of grams, or do you count the scoops?
Dear God, you really do know my life. Yes, I absolutely know exactly how many scoops and how much heaping over the top of that scoop it needs to go in there, and it's exactly 6 scoops.
Nice. Because like I know I've been looking into that for a few years now, and it's like, okay, it's if for 1 cup of coffee, says 35 grams of coarse ground coffee. Then you pour in a little bit of the water, but it can't be boiling, and it has to bloom. And then after a minute, you pour the rest in. Stir it with a wooden spoon. You can't stir the metal spoon.
Yep, you
And
got it.
then if you can press it down smooth, your grind is good. If it's too much pressure, your course is too fine.
You really are my spare son. I love
Nice. Well, it's taken a long time. In fact, I went away from French press for I don't know a couple of years just because it was just or I guess for me while having a under 5 and 3 year old like trying to navigate that and breakfast, I was always messing it up. So we went back to like the pot, and then now since COVID-19, it's kind of terrible positive. Is that I'm like, oh, I have time to do this French press right now. So I've been doing that every day, and it's like, whoa. I mean, the difference, it's a big difference. Like you're saying, like it's just I don't know. I would take like 3 cups a day or more of the regular kind of pot coffee, but this I'm like, whoa. Let's space that out a little bit more.
a cup and a half. Life is good.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, um, in what area maybe? Because I know you talked about fitness a bit, but what area maybe in professionally have you sought perfection, or did you and you didn't realize it, or maybe you did and you're like, oh, this is not working. That mentorship sounds like a great analogy for it. But is there another place in life over the course that you had different careers? I know that you've been in some uh, really amazing companies, and then until you kind of went for yourself, right? Now you work for yourself for the most part.
Well, yeah, it's a good question because that actually is just part of a maturing process that you. I think that's one of those things you have to live through the hard way. And there was a story from back at Intel that comes to mind when you mention that. And that was when we had a project going. And by this point, I was in my mid to late 30s. So I had been around on a few projects. I was running a project with like 24 people on it. And we had just hired in a new college graduate. And his job was to be the evaluation engineer and to go into the software and fix bugs. And so he came rushing into one of our weekly meetings saying, I fixed the last bug. And everybody in the room, obviously 5 years or more older than him, started laughing because there is no such thing as the last bug. And but him being a new college graduate, that was his mindset that he had gone down the list, fixed everything that was on the list of known problems, and assumed that the job was over. And those of us that have been around for a long time know, no, you're always going to be fixing things. And even after you release something, you're going to continue to find problems and have an ongoing process. That was something that he had not gone through yet, that the rest of us had already been through. And so when he said he fixed the last bug and the room erupted in laughter, he didn't know why we were laughing. And that made it even funnier, and we laughed even harder. So,
That's
but again, to take that thought process an extra step is that one of the things that you have to learn the hard way is that there's a time to cut and run. That if you let engineers, especially, work on something until it's perfect, they will. They will never ship a product because Every day, a good engineer will say, "Oh, there's something else I can do to make it that much better."
Hmm.
And that is a process that can consume you and actually take over a project. And there are actually a lot of projects that fail simply because they didn't have a manager who could say, time to release and move on.
Hmm.
And that is kind of the analogy that I think that you're getting at, is that sometimes you have to realize that, yeah, there are milestones. There are real life things that you need to do to make an achievement and move on to the next thing, or at, at least drive a stake in the ground while you continue to move forward, and understand that sometimes there's just good enough.
Absolutely. And I think, you look in a current more in current events. I mean, this applies. It's a very, very big concept, but in current events in sort of like say video games, right? People these days are saying, "Wow, these video games are coming out. They're not even fully done yet." Back in the late '80s or whatever, we actually paid for a video game and got the whole thing, and it was a full product. I'm like, well, there's so many things in these video games, like you said, like people could just keep working on them and never release them because you're still going to play a game and they're still going to have patches, right? They're still going to churn those out. But if they don't get it to you initially, they'll just keep working on it forever, right?
Forever. That's
And
exactly.
um, and it's a really interesting concept too about problems in life where everyone thinks like, okay, I'm going to start my exercise on Monday, January 1st. But I saw a really funny thing that said this year, 2020 doesn't start on a Monday, so I'll start exercising next year. You know, so and so people keep thinking like, okay, when I have all these problems, and I was super guilty of this too before, like when I have all these problems addressed, when I cross off my list, then I'll start something new. And it's the idea of you think you're going to cross all these problems off, but what you're doing is even when you fix a problem, as you know, as an engineer, when you fix one problem, you're creating change. And that's it. It's that simple. When you create change, you're creating more problems somewhere else you haven't seen yet, right? And it's not necessarily always a problem, but when people have this idea they're going to get rid of all their problems, that's the fallacy. But when you realize, oh hey, you know what, I know how to handle all these problems so they're not stressing me out. They're always going to be there. There's always going to be problems, but I need to be okay with that,
Well, and
right?
also important to understand that not every problem needs a solution.
Mm,
Sometimes it's okay to just let something be as it is, imperfect as it is, and just that accept that that's part of life. Because you
right.
can also make yourself go crazy by thinking you have to fix everything.
Yeah, that's something I never thought about until now. Is like when people seek perfection, it's the imperfections that make us unique, right? uh, More or less. And without imperfection, if everyone was exactly perfect, it'd be really fucking boring.
It would.
It'd be really boring.
Well, and also you can drive yourself crazy by wasting your energy.
True.
Some things are just not worth your energy, and just overlook them and move on.
Hmm. When I was teaching, and still, what I kind of recommend parents to do is, a lot of parents will say, "Okay, I want my kid to have A's in every subject," and I'm like, "Okay, that for me, and that's not what I believe." And I think if you have a kid who has a talent in one or two areas, instead of spending all your time getting that C in Spanish up to a B plus, you could spend the area that you're really good at, that you're passionate about, and become extraordinary in, right? So you have this. They have everyone has this idea where they have to get A's or 100% in every category, but then they're almost like sort of jack of all trades, or they're not really excelling in anything. But if they were to take that time that they spent getting that maybe an F to a C or a C to a B, and they put it in something that they are passionate about, that they are talented in, they actually could be truly exceptional, say in that area. So you're not seeking to be perfect in, or this idea of perfection in many areas. You're saying, hey, I have talents, and I'm going to pursue these ones. Right? What do you think about that?
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one. That's too easy a trap for somebody to avoid the problems that are hard.
Well,
I, for example, mathematics.
mhm,
Just pure math. is not for everyone. Pure math is abstract, it is seemingly disconnected from reality, but there are a couple of things that you get from solving hard problems. You learn the discipline that it takes to do things that are hard. And you never know what eclectic mix of knowledge you're going to need in your life. I think back, for example, when I was in high school and I had the most boring history teacher possibly imaginable. He was able to take exciting events in history and put you to sleep with them. And it wasn't until I got into college and I had better instructors and read more interesting books about history that history came alive to me.
Hmm.
But even that didn't mean anything to me in as a college student or in the early parts of my career. But then, many years later, when I started to travel internationally with my work, and I started being exposed to the things that I had read about and learned about decades earlier, it made it come alive and it made me integrate better into those cultures. So while history was not necessarily important to me professionally in designing computer memory, it ended up being an important aspect of my integration into the world as a whole, and makes me more effective in terms of being able to relate to people from other countries, to be able to appreciate the things that I get to do when I go to these other places. So I wouldn't want to downplay subjects that on the surface don't seem like they're relevant to life, because education is a value unto itself. And I don't think that there is a bad subject for anyone.
Right. No, and I agree with that, and that's an interesting perspective too. But what I think your your explanation kind of talks about is, so what I'm talking about is uh, excelling in a subject versus not the lack of experience in a subject, not lack of effort, not lack of experience of, say, history, not lack of effort in history, but the pursuit of having to be a plus in history, because you can still value the experience, you can still learn from it, but when you have these goals to make sure that you are an A in everything, I think you can. Um, if your goal is to be, say, excel in a certain area, and you want to be the best at, say, basketball, and I'm not saying that you don't do history because everything has value. I'm just saying maybe you don't spend the extra 10 hours to raise a grade from a C to a B, spend the extra 10 hours, say, in something that you excel at, but still having these basic skills, I think, are important experiences. Um, just to say, like, people can be imperfect, right? You can be imperfect. Maybe your thing isn't history, maybe your thing isn't spelling, but you have an experience with it. You still can appreciate it and know how it's going to apply later on. But I wouldn't say putting yourself at a to make sure that you have A's in every subject to get some sort of self value or worth is what I was getting at.
Yeah, and there we can agree because it's a matter of balance, right? Life
Hmm.
has to be about balance. I design computer memory. I spend at least 10 to 20, maybe 30 hours a week reading technical documents,
Hmm.
technical journals, proposals, white papers, patents. I go through just reams and reams and reams of data every week. Do I do the same thing for politics? Do I do the same thing for health sciences? Of course not. There's not that many hours in the week. So in a certain sense, you're absolutely right. I'm following that path where the areas that are essential to me, my income and my area of focus and professionally, outweighs all of that other stuff. But I do still try to get a broad scope view of the world.
And
I
that's
let
excellent. That's great.
my area of focus take over my life because I understand that there needs to be balance.
Hmm. Absolutely. So what do you got going on next? What's going on next in the land of Gervasi?
What's going on next? Well, this project that I'm on now, I shut down my consulting business and
Oh, I did
joined.
not know that.
Yeah, I joined a company, and this is possibly the most exciting point in my career. It's
Mhm.
a memory technology based on carbon nanotubes, and it has the speed of a DRAM, and it has thousands of years of data retention with power off.
Wow.
So, so it is literally like taking the best features of DRAM and the best features of flash memory and combining them into something that is completely new. The editor of EE Times
Yeah.
magazine said that if we're successful at deploying this technology, it will be the biggest change in computer architecture since 1971.
And that would obviously impact space travel,
Everything.
everything.
It's like this technology was already tested in space. It was on the
Mhm.
space shuttle when they did the Hubble repair mission. On that same space shuttle flight, our memory technology was in testing on the space shuttle, and it has the distinction of being the only memory that worked without error from takeoff through landing. So we know how it operates under shock, vibration, temperature extremes, alpha radiation, and gamma radiation. Oh, and then magnetic pulse. It is impervious to everything because a carbon nanotube is essentially a rolled up diamond.
Mhm.
Nothing hurts it.
Wow,
It's
that's really cool.
It is, like I say, I've been in the computer industry for 648 years, and this is possibly the most interesting project that I've ever had in all these centuries.
Awesome. And how can do you have so I know you're still doing the Mr. Bill step with Mr. Bill thing on YouTube.
Right?
Is that something that you want me to put in the show notes for people to explore for you?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Oh, Jeff, it's always a pleasure to see you and talk with you.
Likewise. Thank you.